What if Genghis Khan never existed? How one man's absence could have changed the course of world history forever. History often pivots on the lives of extraordinary individuals, and among them, Genghis Khan stands out as a figure whose existence reshaped the entire world. Born as Temujin in the harsh steppes of Mongolia, he united disparate nomadic tribes and forged the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. Stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, his empire altered the course of civilizations. But what if Genghis Khan had never existed? What if Temujin had died young or failed to unite the Mongol tribes? Could the course of history have been radically different? This question opens a vast portal into an alternate world, one where the Mongol Empire never rose. To truly understand this alternate reality, we must first appreciate the Mongol Empire's profound impact. Without Genghis Khan, the Mongol tribes would have remained fragmented, with the fierce warriors of the steppe likely continuing their internecine conflicts or falling under the sway of neighbouring powers. The sweeping military campaigns that devastated empires, toppled dynasties, and redrew borders simply would not have taken place. Consider China, for example, where Genghis Khan's Mongols crushed the Jin dynasty in northern China and later conquered the Song dynasty, uniting all of China under the Yuan dynasty founded by his grandson Kublai Khan. This ushered in significant administrative changes and expanded Eurasian trade networks, but also brought immense destruction and social upheaval. In an alternate timeline without Genghis Khan, the Song dynasty would likely have survived much longer. The Song were remarkable innovators, with their era witnessing the invention and development of gunpowder, the compass, movable type printing, and advanced shipbuilding techniques. Without the Mongol invasions to disrupt this growth, China might have progressed technologically and economically in a more continuous and stable fashion. Trade routes would have flourished under peaceful Song control rather than under the often brutal Mongol administration. This raises a fascinating question. How might China's technological innovations have spread westward without the Pax Mongolica, the peace imposed by Mongol dominance that allowed safe passage of goods and ideas across continents? Perhaps the transmission of inventions like printing and gunpowder would have been slower, but steadier, accompanied by less cultural trauma. Turning to the Islamic world, Genghis Khan's campaigns profoundly affected the heartlands of Islam. The destruction of Baghdad in 1258 by his grandson Hulagu effectively ended the Abbasid Caliphate and led to the loss of countless manuscripts and cultural treasures. Without the Mongol invasions, the Islamic Golden Age centered in Baghdad could have endured far longer. Imagine a world where the legacies of scholars like Al-Razi, Ibn Sina, and Al-Khwarizmi continued uninterrupted. Medical, mathematical, and philosophical advancements might have accelerated globally. Could the Renaissance have begun earlier, or taken a different shape if the Muslim world had remained an unbroken intellectual powerhouse? Yet paradoxically, the Mongol conquests also facilitated an exchange of ideas between East and West that might not have occurred otherwise. This tension between preservation and destruction invites deep reflection on how a conquest can simultaneously devastate and connect cultures. In Central Asia, cities such as Samarkand, Bukhara, and Merv, jewels of culture and learning, were damaged or destroyed during the Mongol invasions. Their rebuilding under Mongol rule created a more unified Silk Road that spanned Asia, facilitating long-distance trade and cultural exchange. Without Genghis Khan, Central Asia might have remained a patchwork of smaller kingdoms and tribes. Trade would likely have continued, but in a more localized manner. Different regions might have innovated independently without a unifying Mongol network. Would the Silk Road have flourished more organically but less efficiently? How would this have affected the global economy and the transmission of culture? In Europe, the Mongol invasion of the East shocked medieval Christendom. The fear of Mongol armies prompted defensive reforms, political centralization, and military unification in some regions. Without this Mongol threat, Europe might have taken longer to organize politically and militarily, potentially delaying developments that eventually led to the Renaissance and Age of Exploration. On the other hand, the absence of Mongol dominance over Russia, the so-called Tatar yoke, would have profound consequences. Mongol rule delayed political centralization in Russia, so without it, Russian principalities might have united earlier and developed differently, perhaps in a manner closer to Western Europe. What might Europe have looked like without this wake-up call from the Mongols? Would the Renaissance have ignited with the same passion and speed? Globally, the Mongol Empire created a period known as the Pax Mongolica, a relative peace across much of Eurasia that allowed unprecedented trade and cultural exchange. Goods, ideas, religions, and even diseases travelled the Silk Road along these routes. Without Genghis Khan, this Pax Mongolica would never have existed. Trade would have continued, but in a more fragmented and localized form, perhaps more prone to interruption from regional conflicts. This could have slowed the spread of innovations like paper currency, gunpowder weaponry, and printing technology to the West. One wonders, would the Renaissance have been as explosive without the rapid influx of Eastern knowledge facilitated by the Mongol period?
The Black Death is another historical event intricately tied to the Mongols. Many historians believe the plague originated in Central Asia and spread westward along Mongol trade routes. The siege of Kaffa in 1346, where Mongol forces catapulted plague-infected bodies into the city, is often cited as a key moment in transmitting the disease to Europe. Without the Mongol Empire's vast network, the course of the Black Death might have been delayed or altered significantly. The plague may still have emerged, but it could have spread more slowly or less destructively. How different would Europe have looked if spared the demographic and social upheavals wrought by the plague? Would it have grown faster with a larger population and different social structures? Religious diversity also flourished under the Mongols, who were remarkably tolerant for their time. Their empire hosted Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, shamanists, and others, allowing peaceful coexistence and cultural exchange. Without Genghis Khan, religious boundaries might have been sharper and more hostile. Tibetan Buddhism's expansion might have been limited. Nestorian Christianity might have declined earlier. Islam might have spread differently throughout Central Asia. Even the foundation of the Mughal Empire in India, established by Babur, a descendant of Genghis Khan, would be altered. Without the Mongols, the cultural and political landscape of South Asia would be vastly different, influencing religion, art, and governance. In East and Southeast Asia, the Mongols' ambitions also left a mark. Japan famously resisted Mongol invasions, aided by typhoons called kamikaze, or divine winds, but the attempted invasions had lasting political impacts. Without Mongol pressure, Japan's internal politics might have evolved more slowly, but with greater stability. Korea and Vietnam, spared from Mongol destruction and subjugation, might have developed stronger independent states earlier. This invites a broader question. Would East Asia have become more fragmented, yet peaceful, or more vulnerable to other foreign invasions? Another significant legacy of the Mongols was the rise of Timur, or Tamerlane, who claimed descent from Genghis Khan. His brutal campaigns ravaged large parts of Asia and the Middle East, but they also sparked a cultural and artistic renaissance known as the Timurid Renaissance. Without the Mongol Empire's precedent, Timur's rise is unlikely. The destruction he caused would be avoided, but so would this unique flowering of Persian and Central Asian art and architecture. Would the world be better off without the violence, yet poorer culturally? The age of exploration, which reshaped the modern world, was partly stimulated by the technological and economic exchanges during the Mongol era. Without this stimulus, explorers like Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Magellan might have set sail decades or even centuries later. The colonization of the Americas and the rise of global maritime empires would have been delayed, profoundly altering world history. Would the modern world's interconnectedness have taken longer to develop? Would the Atlantic slave trade and colonial exploitation have been postponed, reshaping global demographics and cultures? Ultimately, without Genghis Khan, the modern world might be less globalized and more fragmented. Languages, religions, foods, and technologies would travel more slowly and over shorter distances. Nation-states would develop more independently, perhaps along quieter, less violent paths. The trauma and destruction caused by the Mongol conquests would be avoided, but so would some of the unifying forces that connected Eurasia and shaped the world's cultural mosaic. As we imagine a world without Genghis Khan, we face a paradox. His empire caused immense destruction and loss, yet it paved the way for global connections, cultural exchanges, and technological progress. Was the cost of the Mongol Empire worth its legacy? Or would humanity have thrived better along a quieter, less violent path? What do you think? How would history and your own country's culture be different if the Mongol Empire had never existed? Subscribe to The Real History for more deep dives into the fascinating what-ifs of our past. exploring alternate histories that shaped the world in unexpected ways. Hit the bell icon to never miss an episode. Share your thoughts in the comments. What other historical figures would you like us to explore? Your curiosity fuels our journey through time.